What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Alright, Rob Core, we are in a weird situation, and the reason why is because of the fact that we are continuing to cover the Omega and Beyond Omega level series. The problem with this is I want to start rolling things over into like DC and Valiant and Image. The issue is that almost all publishers outside of Marvel have no classification for their characters. So we can do one of two things. Either we can keep the Omega and Beyond Omega level name going, which I'd prefer to do, and then just tack characters on. So like Beyond Omega level Superman 1 million, or Omega level Superboy Prime or something along those lines. At the same time, we could just rename it, because remember, the designation Omega and Beyond Omega level is either established by virtue of somebody else referring to them that way, or just because of the level of power they possess. For example, Storm was classified as an Omega level threat by Sentinels, meaning she's now an Omega level mutant. That was done in Black Panther number 21, I think it was, or 17 or something along those lines. But with characters like Protege, for example, he's not really listed as an Omega level being per se, but because of the power that he possesses, he's well beyond Omega level in almost every single form or fashion. So again, it's really up to you. I mean, just post a comment down below and let me know what you guys think. I'd rather keep the Omega level name going, but if we have to rename it, then we can. But anyway, Protege is probably the most overpowered character that I've ever seen that's not a mutant. Keep in mind, the Marquis of Death, when it comes to like mutants, like the whole mutant roster, the Marquis of Death was about as powerful as we came across. But with characters like Protege, it's absolutely insane because his power is actually pretty unique. So all this really stems back to Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock, of course, being a character who's been around for quite some time, is basically like Jesus in Marvel Comics. I mean, he's been crucified, he's died, he's been resurrected. I mean, he's effectively Jesus for all intents and purposes, and he's had some pretty cool moments. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As far as I'm aware, he's not going to be in Infinity War, but maybe they'll wake him up early and he'll be in Infinity Gauntlet. I have no clue. But Adam Warlock actually had an evil persona that was called the Magus. But the way that this played out is Adam Warlock received his Infinity Stone from the High Evolutionary. Adam Warlock got the Soul Stone. And over the course of his publication history, it was revealed that at some point in the future, Adam Warlock was going to become a bad guy named the Magus, which is basically where he became corrupted by his own Infinity Stone. Now, of course, this led into all kinds of time travel capers and different things like that, where Adam Warlock effectively kept this from happening. But there is an alternate reality called Earth 691 where this didn't happen, where the Magus basically became a villain. And that's one of the reasons why the Magus always ends up coming back. Now, in this particular reality, and even in the future of the main Marvel universe, the Magus started a religious organization called the Universal Church of Truth. And the Universal Church of Truth simply just existed to consolidate power. That's all it was. It was conquering civilizations, it was conquering planets. At the height of its rule, the Universal Church of Truth encompassed billions of people across, millions of star systems, and it was absolutely crazy how huge it was. That was one of the things that we saw during the Thanos Imperative storyline. When the rift was torn open in space, the Universal Church of Truth teleported all these different ships and all these different planets along the rift and then blew them all up, tore the rift open, and then the Cancerverse started spilling out. So it was really kind of a cool set of stories there. But in this particular instance, in the Earth 691 reality, the Magus was effectively defeated and then eliminated. And so the result was that the Universal Church of Truth had no leader. And so what they did is they basically created their own god in the form of a kid named Protege. Now, because of the fact that this is all, totally separate from the main Marvel universe, things unfolded pretty interesting and in a pretty wild way. I mean, it had its own iteration of Secret Wars and so on and so forth. But the idea here is that eventually the Beyonder stumbles across Protege and actually kidnaps Protege just to kind of see what the kid's about. And that's when Protege's powers start manifesting. What we end up finding out is that this kid has the ability to duplicate the powers of others, and there's no limit to it. As long as he sees a person using their powers, then he can basically duplicate them in any form or fashion. The first time this happens is against the Beyonder. The Beyonder starts to use these reality warping powers, and then Protege starts mimicking them and then overpowers the Beyonder and defeats him. Now, because of the fact that the Beyonder was defeated by Protege, in return, the Living Tribunal saw everything that was happening and consider Protege to be this imbalance in the multiverse, meaning that if he was allowed to live long enough, Protege could potentially conquer the entirety of the multiverse and become the new one above all. The funny thing about this is that Protege began to realize that himself, and so the result is that he just started hopping around to all these different different villains, all these different heroes, all these different high-level cosmic entities, eternity, and so on and so forth, and started battling all of them for the purpose of basically seeing what they were capable of, copying their powers, keeping those powers, defeating them, and then going forward as this just godlike powerful being. Now keep in mind, Protege only appeared for something like 14 issues or something along those lines. It was for a singular story arc. But what this did is it also coincided with the Guardians of the Galaxy from the 31st century. So again, them arriving on the scene was really more like a stopgap measure. There wasn't a whole lot they could do. And in fact, Protege actually intended to conquer the entire realm of the Beyonders. And that's what makes Protege so powerful. Despite the fact that these beings have an insane level of power, if he sees them use those powers, he can duplicate it. And that's the inherent weakness that he has. He can't actually use the powers that another person has until he sees them using their powers. Now, if a person were to use telepathy on him and he were to realize they were using telepathy, then suddenly he's a telepath. If a person has the ability to manipulate matter on the subatomic scale and he sees them doing that, now he can do it. And this led all the way up to the Living Tribunal. And so that's what makes him one of the most dangerous characters, is because the Living Tribunal had to battle Protege, but every conflict, every single attack that the Living Tribunal used, Protege was immediately able to duplicate it to overcome it. And so the result was that Protege was in effect as powerful as the One Above All. Now, the only way in which Marvel could basically right themselves out of this hole that they created was to try to find a workaround for defeating Protege. If Protege couldn't be beat through traditional means, which is to say a straight up fight, then Protege basically had to be tricked. And so what Marvel did is they introduced a Celestial named Scathan the Approver, and they basically gave no information about this guy. There was absolutely nothing to indicate what Scathan was about or what Scathan was capable of or what he could do. All we knew was that Scathan was either an approver or a disapprover. Either he agreed with what was happening or he didn't agree with what was happening. We don't know if Scathan the Approver was the One Above All. We don't know if Scathan the Approver was just this insanely powerful Celestial, more powerful than anything else. You know, we don't know if it was on par with like the Dreaming Celestial or something along those lines. For those of you guys who read that X-Men story. For those of you guys who don't know, the Dreaming Celestial is like the most powerful Celestial to have ever existed. Like all the other Celestials are terrified of it. They actually locked him away on Earth for quite some time. But the fact remains here that what ends up happening in this story is Scathan the Approver disapproves of what it is that Protege's doing by basically attacking every single cosmic entity and the Living Tribunal and the Celestials and these superheroes and defeating them all at the same time. And in return, the Living Tribunal uses its power to basically confine Protege and keep him locked away, to basically absorb Protege into himself. And so again, it's kind of an end run to defeat his character. It's kind of a way to just sort of throw it out, you know, and not have to really worry about it. But at his absolute peak, when Protege was at his absolute highest point in power, he was the most powerful being to have ever existed in the history of Marvel Comics, as far as I'm aware. Powerful than any mutant we've ever seen, more powerful than the Living Tribunal, second only to the One Above All. And even then, that asks the question, could Protege become as powerful as the One Above All? Assuming that the One Above All had enough power to just phase Protege out of existence without Protege realizing that the One Above All was there, then that would bring an end to the conflict pretty quickly, no muss, no fuss. But as we know from previous stories, the One Above All works in weird ways. For example, during the story Marvel The End, when Thanos destroyed the entirety of the multiverse, it was because the One Above All realized that there was a imbalance or an incorrect aspect of the multiverse, and in turn instigated a series of events that led to Thanos discovering the heart of the universe, absorbing that power into itself, and then when Thanos realized what was going on, fixing the imbalance, which basically just turned out to be everybody effectively dying, and then following that, effectively killed himself off. But despite all this stuff, if Protege can copy the powers of people that he sees or individuals who use these different powers, if the One Above All were to step in and Protege were to see the One Above All using these reality warping powers or something along those lines, he would instantly be able to counter those abilities and then probably overpower the One Above All, or at the very least, the battle would lead to a stalemate that would obliterate all things in existence, would literally destroy the entire omniverse of Marvel, which is a concept that we haven't even dealt with yet. The omniverse, for those of you guys who don't know, encompasses everything. Like that's the movies, the TV shows, the comics, even the real world, so to speak. That's the kind of power that, you know, the One Above All has, and it would lead to the destruction of all those things. Like Marvel would simply cease to exist, you know, if they were to write that story. That's how the writer would play it out. They would say, and now all things in existence are gone. That's how that story would end. But that's the kind of power that we're dealing with here with Protege. It's unrivaled. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, there's no character out there that could conceivably stand toe to toe against Protege in terms of just straight up use of their abilities. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think we should do with the future of the the Omega Beyond Omega level name, rolling in other characters, publications, different things like that. If you're new here to Comics Explained, make sure you hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.